Hello guys, this is Sagar Shah here and I have with me Grandmaster Daniel King. I have to tell you guys that when I was a young kid and improving at chess, it was my dream to do a video with Danny King.
Your dream or your nightmare? I don't know. Which one is it?
It was definitely my dream. I used to spend hours looking at your videos, learning from them. And today, I think 25th of May, this dream comes true. So Danny, we are at the Lindores Abbey Chess Superstars tournament. And it was an exciting first day.
Oh, yeah, great first day. And for these players, it's their first time in Scotland. And, well, what stunning scenery here. It is just so green and fresh. And, yeah, it's a treat to be here after London.
Yeah, so Danny was giving the commentary along with Gena Sosonko, and right now the first day got over. There were 3 rounds, and we would like to do a short recap of the interesting moments. I think the first very interesting game was right in round 1 when Karyakin beat Vishy Anand. What do you think went wrong for Anand in that game?
I think he got caught actually in some very deep preparation by Sergei, because it's one of these Queen's Gambit declines where, well, they're both real specialists in this opening actually. And suddenly there was this move, Bishop F6, which was it on the 20th move, I think? It could have been, anyway, very deep. And I think at this moment, Vishy started to think, because here he has to make a fundamental decision. He knows he's worse, but he's got a choice of 2 different endgames. One is to go into this endgame with rook and 2 pawns against bishop and knight. Or he did what he did in the game, which was to ditch a pawn, but it looked as though actually he had very good compensation with his active rook, with this potential of the bishop coming across the board to attack the weakened pawns on the queen side. But it didn't quite click. I think maybe I suspect he was all right in this position, but he missed his way. I mean, maybe the engines will tell us one way or the other, but he missed his way and Sergei got control. Okay, it was still a bit messy, and then time shortage and Vishy lost. But yeah, I think this moment, Bishop F6, this is a key moment in the game actually.
So after Bishop F6, if Black took Gf6, Knight F6 and this Knight into E8, Rook E8, Rook into E5, this position, how would you assess it and who do you think is better?
White is better, no doubt about that, with the Rook and 2 against Bishop and Knight. And I think the problem is, I can understand why Vishy was reluctant to go in for this, because it's actually very difficult to see how he could get any winning chances from this position. However, it still might be possible to draw this position. Hindsight's a beautiful thing. You know, it's very difficult to compare these 2 different endgames. You know, they're both worse for Black. Well, how do you judge that one? It's really difficult. Who knows?
Right. I mean, Anand went for counterplay, but in the end, he fell short. I think we had 2 more decisive games, and both of them came in the last round, which was the 3rd round of today. And the first one was Ding Liren, who was playing with the white pieces against Karyakin. And there was this move, Knight G4 and Knight into F2. Something went wrong, yeah?
Well, I think this sacrifice is actually rather speculative. And I think both players appreciated this during the game, that really this sack falls short. And, well, Ding was very pleased with himself after the game. He was very pleased that he found this manoeuvre of the king coming up the board. It was on E3 and then moving back down via D2 to C1 and finally to B1. And actually he consolidated the game very well indeed. Curiously enough, we were talking about, in our commentary, about this kind of king march earlier, because in 1867...
That's like 150 years ago.
Yeah, 1867, Wilhelm Steinitz, of course not world champion at that point, but still he was getting, well, closer to the World Championship. Wilhelm Steinitz played a tournament in Dundee, which actually is only a few miles away from here. Across the river, actually. So Wilhelm Steinitz played in Dundee, and according to a chess historian I was speaking to today, this was the debut of his opening variation, the Steinitz Gambit, a variation of the King's Gambit, which features White's king marching up the board from e1 to e2, and sometimes goes even further to d3 in some variations. So there was a kind of uncanny echo of 150 years or more ago. Yeah, it's curious. But anyway, instead of this move knight g4 and knight takes f2, in fact, as both players pointed out after the game, Sergei could have played knight h5, which was actually a very strong move. And there's another idea to play the pawn to f6 and, well, basically to give up this knight on h5 after knight h5, bishop e3, and then f6, and then g4, and then you just give up the knight with f takes e5. Okay, when white takes the knight, queen h5. Well, in short, black gives up a piece in another way, but gets absolutely superb compensation.
Yeah, Karyakin was saying that that's completely crushing for him. So
Of course, white doesn't need to play g4. It's possible just to exchange on f6, but black is very comfortably placed in that position. Very, very pleasant position for black.
yeah, coming to the next game where Vishy Anand was playing against Magnus Carlsen. Carlsen had the white pieces. This is always an interesting battle because both of them have fought 2 World Championship matches against each other. I think this game, Anand got a very good position out of the opening.
Well, it could have been. Yeah, and something curious happened with Vishy in this game. It seemed to me to be a kind of lack of confidence. At some moment, just out of the opening, he could have played a6, pushing the knight back, and then c4 and b5. This absolutely standard idea of creating this pawn majority on the queen side. Now, this does lead to double-edged play, but I think somehow he was maybe worried about a kingside attack or something like this and preferred to keep tension in the centre. But I think this was a fundamental error. And Magnus actually quite quickly after that got the upper hand.
I was watching the game live, and when I saw that the bishop was on g7 and Anand played d4, I thought he was going to dominate the game then. But knight a4 move came as a surprise, and that was just like the game crumbled from there onwards for Anand.
I think Vishy obviously overlooked that, and as you say, it was a shocker. And suddenly there's this tactic with the loose bishop on b7 and the weakness of the f7 square, and of course this take on f7 and queen b3, and everything falls into place for white. It's kind of a dream position, isn't it, for Magnus? And Vishy looks a bit out of sorts at the moment, I have to say. Hopefully he'll pick up tomorrow. You know, we'd like to see Vishy come back.
So after 3 rounds, it's Anand who is on half out of 3. The leaders are Ding Liren and Carlsen, 2 out of 3. So I'm going to ask you a tough question now to make a prediction for tomorrow. Who do you think will win this tournament?
Magnus. But actually, yeah, I mean, Ding was going to be my call for if anyone is going to defeat Magnus here and match him in the tournament, then actually I think it could be Ding Liren. And that happened today, you know, as you say, both sharing the lead on 2 out of 3. And the reason is that Ding actually has a very good score against Magnus. Lots of draws this year. They just played in Abidjan, and there were 2 draws in the Blitz games, a draw in the Rapid play, and Ding somehow does okay against Magnus. So he is the key to this tournament, I think. Can he hold Magnus, and can he do well against Sergei and against Vishy? So I think it's going to be very tight, actually, but we can't ever rule out Magnus as favourite to win the tournament. Yeah,
I think Ding on his own is quite potent, but when you put Ding along with the cold that Magnus is facing in the hall, I think it's going to be tough for.
Very interesting that Magnus mentioned this in the press conference. This brought a a kind of gasp of breath from the audience, as Magnus was very blunt, as he sometimes can be.
Yeah, it was very, very cold. And because of this, I just didn't really enjoy it. Okay, sure.
But actually, Magnus complained about the cold during the World Championship match in London, and actually was very upset about it. In some of the early games, this was well, they created a theatre, created a room, but they put in special air conditioning in the playing room. But at some moment it fell below a certain level, and Magnus complained bitterly about this. And, well, they sort of notched it up to 22 instead of 21 degrees or something like that. But he obviously feels very sensitive about it. So
Yes, there was a heater that was put here today, but I think it didn't do the job. So we have to look on the board tomorrow and also off the board.
yeah, well, it's true. What I was going to say was they're playing in a whiskey distillery, and of course the temperature for the stills must be at a regular, even temperature, and actually it can't be too hot. So maybe this might count against Magnus. I have a recommendation for him.
What's that?
Put on an extra layer. Put on a jumper. This is Scotland. You don't come to Scotland to get a suntan.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we started recording when there was no rain. Now it's drizzling. So, you can't ever predict Scotland weather.
Yeah, when we arrived yesterday, it was beautiful sunshine, but now we're in the drizzle, and that's Scotland for you. But it's beautiful here.
Yeah, completely beautiful. We'll see you tomorrow, and hopefully we can do a roundup tomorrow as well after the round.
Definitely.
Thank you, everyone.